Okay, so we are here with Marcus and Beth. They have been with me for the last, it's coming up to 6 months now, ending week 22 now. And I think what's pretty important to talk about today is just why you guys came to me as well, how we kind of know each other as well. I think that's pretty important to talk about. How the last 6 months have gone, and yeah, we can kind of close off with maybe just why my approach is slightly different, why it's worked, and what kind of results you've generated too. So without further ado, I'll let you guys kind of introduce yourselves and maybe talk a bit about what health and fitness was like before this, and maybe what it's like in your eyes now.
Hello, I'm Marcus. So, I mean, to paint a picture of the context for us is like we are a couple and we have 2 children. We've got a 10-month-old baby at home. And I think when we started, we were coming out of kind of the post, having a new baby, slipping into some old habits, lots of binge eating on the couch at the end of the night, sort of feeding our tiredness at the end of a very busy day, looking after 2 small humans. I think for us, the way we were eating and our approach to food was a little bit kind of sporadic and a bit reactive. It sort of felt like we never really had a solid kind of routine or plan that we were sort of kind of sticking to. We would get in fitness where we could. We would eat meals that we thought were sort of fueling our body and giving us kind of what we need to tackle our various responsibilities. But I guess sort of realizing that wasn't the case. And I think we both were at a point where we sort of wanted to make a change and make a more consistent and longer term change rather than sort of trying different things on our own. And I sort of found, I know I wasn't getting the results I wanted. I wasn't kind of consistent or sort of feeling like I wanted to, or kind of moving towards the goals that I wanted to achieve. So I think that was kind of what drove me to it. For context, I mean, we've trained with you before at a gym in another life previously. And so you kind of popping up on reels on Instagram and being like, oh, hey, it's George, was kind of a funny sort of twist of fate, but it actually ended up working very well because I think there was already a bit of knowledge and a bit of trust. We sort of knew you, we liked training with you previously. And so it was kind of like, well, if we're going to do this, it's with someone who we're familiar with, who we know, who we trust, who sort of like when we were working with you, were working with us with where we were at in our fitness journey as well. So
Yeah, we knew George from a gym with group classes and we'd always be like, oh yes, it's George today.
It's really what it is.
Or we'd be like, oh, George had a replacement. But yeah, I guess I came to it, I'd given, I was 4 months postpartum, and I think part of it was sort of rebuilding some of my fitness. And in the past, we had been going to these group classes, but I think the exercises and what we were doing felt sort of a bit sporadic and inconsistent, and I don't think we sort of saw consistent results. And from a perspective of nutrition, I think I'd always sort of been in the mindset, like I didn't really know how to eat healthy in a way that wasn't restrictive. And I sort of had a bit of an all or nothing mentality that set me up for failure like every single time. I think it's got to be a certain way. You can only eat this, and then obviously perfection is never attainable. And so you sort of, you fall off the bandwagon and I think I had the attitude of like, well, I've just cooked it all. Or, okay, this week's now arrived, we'll start again on Monday. And it was just a vicious sort of cycle. And I think, might get to this a bit later, but I think the most valuable thing that I've learned in the last 6 months is balance. I thought when people talked about being consistent, it was consistently perfect. And I was like, how do people do that? Where actually it's like, no, it's being imperfect, but doing that consistently. Every day is a new day. Every meal is a new meal. And yeah, I think that's been the most valuable thing, is sort of having those challenges or it being imperfect, but then like just getting back to it and actually having a really clear framework and guideline of like, okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to start, my breakfast is going to look like this as well. And yeah, I think learning to be imperfect but consistent has been the most valuable thing. And, if this had been sort of some of those 8-week gym challenges that I'd done in the past, after, a shitty week, you're just like, meh, all right, this is over. Whereas I think the fact that it's 6 months, you've got time to, okay, like let's get back to it. And it really just feels like it's more reflective of real life.
Essentially the clock doesn't feel like it's ticking. It's obviously like there's a time frame, of course, but it doesn't feel like, hey, 2 weeks away and oh God, I need to get my act together.
Yeah.
I think that whole imperfect consistency is like the tagline basically, and that's sustainability. Like that's what I want for every client as well. And I'm curious, like, and this could be a together answer as well, individual answers, but why you feel like it actually worked, and my approach in particular, and maybe how that's been different in the past, because you guys, you've been consistent with fitness, or consistent with fitness for a long time, been aware of kind of what you should do maybe in the gym, how you should eat, etc. So why do you feel like maybe previous efforts hadn't led to long-term results, and why do you feel like this one?
I feel like it's more sustainable, I guess, in the sense of like, well, it's realistic as to what we can kind of achieve in terms of our lifestyles and our goals, and setting you up for long-term success. And it's more so about, I guess before this, I didn't realise I wasn't kind of fueling my body properly with food, and I feel like my meals were all unbalanced, and, you know, some were way too heavy, some were not enough. And so it's kind of that sense of like, well, actually knowing to, you know, set up your meals in a consistent way, it just means it becomes more automatic, it becomes second nature, and I feel like then it just is more embedded in your day-to-day life. Like, you're not necessarily having to think about every single meal, or it's like, you know, if your meals are set up in a particular way for every single one, and you have a sense of what they need to look like, what, you know, foods, or how to balance it out properly, it's like you're not having to play catch up if you have a heavier meal one time. You're not having to like count calories to sort of, you know, if you have a bigger meal or whatever it is. It sort of is just like the framework in itself sets you up for success, because it just becomes second nature. You're not necessarily having to think on the go constantly. And I think, you know, working and having a social life and children and that sort of stuff, it's like you kind of want to take the guesswork out of it. You just want to be able to set everything up in a similar way and just be able to do it without having to think about it, and have it be automatic. And I think that's sort of the biggest change that we've seen is like, yeah, sure, you do the hard work early on to kind of reset your mind and how you approach food, but then kind of, I think even by the 2 or 3 month mark, it just becomes routine, and it becomes habit, and it's really, really ingrained in just sort of your day-to-day life. My knowledge of eating well would, you know, or having kind of like that perfect kind of diet was like sacrifice and missing out on things. I think we love food. We love going out for dinners, we love going out for meals. And it's kind of like knowing that, you know, we don't have to miss out on that stuff that's really enjoyable, to, you know, to sacrifice that or feel like you're having to play catch up to do that. It's about having the balance and the flexibility within your day or your week to do that.
Look, I guess I second all of that. And I think too, in terms of balancing your meals, it's just really simple approach. Like, you can do it visually, and it means that you can go to a friend's place for dinner and kind of put together a balanced plate. I actually, before we started working with you, I wanted to make a change, and I downloaded MyFitnessPal, and I think I put in 1.5 meals worth, and I was just like, fuck, I cannot do this again. It is demoralizing, it's complicated, whereas this, it just, I think, like, it takes away some of the emotion or the stigma or whatever around calories, and it's just these are the portions, and don't worry too much about anything else, and you've got room to be flexible or fuck up, and it's not a huge deal.
And you're not overthinking it. I think by this stage, it's like we don't overthink it. You know, you sort of know what your body kind of needs and what a meal, you know, kind of should look like. And then, you know, it's not, again, like you said, it can be just so taxing having to think about how every meal is meant to look. But it's like, well, if they're all balanced in the same way, like you don't, you kind of, you know what to do. It takes the guesswork out of it.
And I think something very specific to you, George, as well, is that if I, you know, had a bad week and I was spiraling, you were like, not a huge deal. You know, like it wasn't, okay, ship up and shape out or compensate for it. You were very much just like, you know, it was Christmas. It's not a huge deal. I think that was also helped my attitude as well, of not being all or nothing, or not being, you know, trying to be perfect. And that is what made it sustainable, is you're always really supportive and just kind of like, it's not a big deal.
I think that's a really important one, because like typically people that struggle with relationships with food, all or nothing thinking, binging, one of the worst things you can do for people like that is kind of then have this all or nothing approach to coaching them. And it's like sink or swim, because that's how it was like for me. Like the reason I coach this way now is because I've kind of experienced that throughout my life as well. So it's translating that. And I guess kind of ultimate question here is a bit about what you said earlier around kind of you knew me, you trusted me, and like I think even for people that just see me online, you know, what we'll do is this kind of two-call process. The first is like a general call I had with you and just talking about like what support you feel like you need, before then talking about like what the program would look like, etc. So I'm pretty interested, and maybe you could also mention a bit about what you feel like you've gained most out of this too, like what you've achieved most. Obviously, you know, there's the relationship with food, there's the actual weight loss, there's the body recomposition, there's the strength, etc. But what main hurdles, objections, kind of limiting beliefs do you think you overcame to get started? Because, you know, you guys knew me. I used to kind of like work with you in group classes, and we kind of knew each other. But for someone maybe that had no idea who I was and just was following me on Instagram, and that may be completely different, that relationship. So I'm curious of maybe your answers there, your thoughts there.
I think the thing is like I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I think it was kind of like going into this, I was sort of like, I know I need to make a change, but I don't really know what that is exactly. And so I think that first conversation was really helpful for me to kind of pinpoint what it is that I wanted to kind of address or work on. And I think it was a couple of things. It was kind of the, you know, fitness goals, or kind of, you know, trying to achieve what I was hoping for, which is probably more around like body recomposition and losing a little bit of weight. But also kind of like understanding the link between sort of food and my attitudes and relationship with food, and what that meant and how that wasn't actually progressing me forward. And that was probably like, I could do the, you know, the exercises, and I, you know, was a runner and stuff like that as well. But I guess it's like that was the part that I just didn't know anything about. And I didn't know that I didn't know anything about it. I thought I was doing okay, and I thought, you know, restrict or like eat less or like count calories, that sort of thing. So I think you were very open in just kind of like starting with where I was at and trying to kind of work me down the path to work out what my goals actually were. Because I sort of felt like I was a little bit like, I know I need to do something, but I don't know what. So you're really good at sort of helping me identify, actually, no, this isn't just like about like getting results in the gym. This is actually kind of shifting and changing attitudes around food and like actually fueling my body properly, which was the biggest thing. Is like, I didn't realize I wasn't fueling my body properly at all. I was really, really tired. I was, you know, lethargic. I was, you know, I felt like I was just sort of dragging myself through the days a bit. And part of that is like having a newborn and also having a toddler and also like a busy job. But it's also like the difference that I saw in terms of actually when I changed sort of my approach to eating and fueling my body properly, is like my energy levels like drastically increased. Or sort of like that was the biggest thing I think that I overcame, was like understanding my relationship with food and not knowing that I wasn't doing it properly. I wasn't fueling my body properly, and then how I could see differences in my energy and how I could think clearer, and how, you know, I could do more in the gym and I could get back into running and enjoy it as well. So I think it's sort of like, that was probably the biggest thing that I overcame, that I didn't really know what I needed to change. And it really was more so around that stuff, because it allowed the fitness stuff to really kind of take off and then really see changes in my body that I haven't seen like in such a long time. That was mine for me, which is a bit of a roundabout answer. But I think also you kind of setting it up in the first session and just kind of being like, where are you at? Like, what do you think your you know, your struggles are or your barriers are, and me kind of being like, I think it's this, but I'm not really sure. But I think you were kind of patient, and you kind of just kind of went along with me on the journey to sort of work out, okay, no, this is kind of the thing, this is the bit that's missing, or it's not working for you.
And I think I was a bit like, okay, like super ripped guy on Instagram. Is he, you know, I'm like,
Everyone says,
you know,
like, there's no way you struggle with binge eating. There's no way that you struggle with your weight, for example. It's so hard to, so many people say that.
And I was like, how are you going to work with me? Like, I'm a new mum, really, you know, not in shape, and I, you know, have struggled with that relationship with food. So I think that was like my initial, but then I think talking to you, you know, as Marcus said, it's very much, you know, where are you at? What are you trying to achieve? And I think, you know, throughout the process you've been, you know, it has been really personalized, and you know, you've responded to different challenges like in our lives or in, you know, like with injury or, you know, stuff like that. So I think, it's sort of like I had to get over, okay, like what's this ripped guy, you know, how's he going to like relate to my life or be able to, you know, kind of coach me in my phase of life, but I think you very much started with where we were. And really focused on what was for us, and if anything, like kind of started off more gentle than I thought, or my first instinct was. And it was very much, you know, this is where we're at, let's get our foundation, and then let's build from there.
I think that's the thing I think about them just then is like not even the sense of going slow, because I think a lot of the adjustments we made were pretty big from the beginning, like in terms of the way we were eating and, you know, kind of the workouts and getting that kind of consistency. But I think it is, you know, being personalized in a way to sort of be like, okay, well, this is where you're at, but like this is how we're going to set you up for like 6 months down the track. This is how we're going to set you up for 12 months down the track. So it's being personalized and thinking about kind of the long game, that it's like, well, in the short term, I'm not here to make you lose, you know, 10 kilos in 12 weeks. I'm here to kind of like actually start you on a longer term kind of journey where you're like, you will see these results and you'll have these results in a sustainable way, and to build a strong body, to kind of like build a mindset that's going to stick, and it's going to stick with us post, you know, we're finishing up in a week. But it's like beyond this, it's like this is something that now has set us up for just consistency and kind of
For life.
Starting, you know, where we're at, which is probably slower than other people might have needed, or like some people probably looking for quicker fixes or that sort of thing too. But I think that we realised, you know, we've done 12-week challenges where we've dropped a bunch of weight, but it didn't stick. Like, it was sort of, you know, you're eating zoodles instead of fucking pasta, and you're like, this is so depressing. And your portions are this big, but it's like actually like eating more, like fueling your body properly, like having a proper breakfast, like, you know, and how much you're like snacking throughout the day, and just like that kind of going out the window, and eating for enjoyment, not just because I'm hungry. So I think the longer term, more personalised approaches was great for us.
PTSD flashbacks
Of zoodles. Oh,
That was awesome, guys. And again, thank you for the last 6 months. Thank you for this.